Oh my guys, such Kremp again say, hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. So much reaction to the World Championship victory. Dashy giving his perspective after the tournament concludes, talking about what people were saying about the team during the course of the season and where they end the year from here. What about the Mercury situation as well? Toronto responding to all the drama around the fact that they could have kept Mercury's and they did not, and it's led to this whole situation that we've seen unfold before our very eyes over the last few days. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Let's begin just looking through the 4 players that won the World Championship, where they now sit. 3-time World Champion for Shotzzy, 2020, 2024, 2025, 8-time tournament winner, 2020 season MVP, 2020 Rookie of the Year, 2 times tournament MVP, first ever back-to-back Call of Duty World Champion on the same organisation, done it with Dashy as well, 1 times Halo Champion to throw into the mix as well. Of course, it doesn't really change the debate in terms of where Shotzzy sits as a Call of Duty player, the fact that he won the Halo ring in 2018, but in terms of an esports player, right, like in terms of the conversation with Formal, which is still a conversation, okay, in my head I'm still feeling like, just because of Formal's longevity and the fact that Formal's still competing and still winning, it's tough to, you know, let's say dethrone Formal as the greatest ever controller FPS player, if you want to say that. Formal's also been competing for something like 12, 13 years. Shotzi's been competing for more like maybe 7. So, you know, I think the longevity factor is in Formal's favour, but then you also might argue that, well, Shotzi's achieved more in fewer years, which is also a positive. So, yeah, I don't know. Does it change the game, in your opinion, in terms of where Formal and Shotzzy sit all time, in terms of greatest ever controller FPS players across different titles? I think I'm still giving Formal the edge for now, but that probably won't be the case by the end of these guys' careers. For Dashy, I mean, it's great. Dashy's career is so fun, honestly, because for years it was frustrating to see a player with so much talent seemingly not necessarily squander it. Obviously, there were decisions that Dashy, I'm sure, will look back on in hindsight and say, well, probably could have handled that differently, probably could have handled that differently. But, you know, for many years, Dashy had the talent and not quite the accolades, and the pressure was obviously on his shoulders heavily. Last year's World Championship Grand Final, he had a .84. I think it was mainly Pred and Kenny that were delivering the goods in last year's Champs Grand Final. Shotzzy was very good as well. The Dashy wasn't really there last Champs Grand Finals. Makes sense. The pressure was really on his shoulders at the time. This year's Champs Finals, he was lights out, and that should really be no surprise. There was always a feeling after winning last year's Champs that it might unleash Dashy a bit more, and I think we saw a bit of that this season. But as the year went on, like when they got Mercury's, then it started to become a little bit of a different story, especially at the World Championship. For Huke, it's so cool to see for him. 2-time World Champion, 6-time tournament winner now, like just shutting down so many narratives around his career over the last few years. Narratives that at times were fair and deserved, and maybe without them, Huke wouldn't have become the player that he is. And then Mercury's turned up a couple of months ago on the scene. He's now a tournament winner, he's an MVP, and he's a world champion. You know, there's not, I mean, Assault, his only event win ever was the World Championship, and he won the MVP back in 2018. I don't expect this to be Mercury's only ever championship, let me just say that to be very clear. Damon Barlow, DB5 Karma, gets his 5th ring as, like, in the Call of Duty world. Kind of crazy, right? I mean, obviously, 3 of them were as players. He competed at the first championship back in 2013. There's been 13 World Championships that have happened by now. Karma's won 5 of them, either as a player or as a coach. Pretty insane, and thought this was pretty fire, actually, here that I think Roosevelt put together here for the World Championship wins, the rings that he won as a player, and now as a coach over the last couple of years as well. I will say, it did seem pretty lit in there yesterday. Obviously, I wasn't at the venue this weekend, which I think was, you know, obviously in hindsight, you think, damn, it would have been great to be there on the Sunday. I don't think I necessarily made a mistake not going, to be perfectly honest. But what I will say is that, at least on the Sunday, those that attended were like, yeah, it was pretty fire in there. Like, you guys can see by this picture that, you know, there was a very solid crowd. The bowl was pretty filled up. The floor, obviously, was pretty packed most of the time. Thursday, Friday, sure, pretty lackluster on those couple of days, but at least thankfully for the grand finals, we turned up a bit. And I know that some people are saying, oh, well, maybe it's time to go back to Kitchener. Kitchener delivered on all fronts. Not only did OpTic win in Canada, which also was a talking point for Dashy as well, but also the viewership was mega. Now, I don't want this to be perceived in the wrong way, but I think we've got to take the positives from this. That this was, in terms of viewership, the highest ever peak viewers that we have had for a Call of Duty event. And this even includes a couple of seasons ago in Modern Warfare 2, when it was on Twitch, and that typically will increase viewership as well. Like next season, there is a good possibility we're also back on Twitch and YouTube. Just to make it clear, I think we'll still be on YouTube, so I'll still be watching on YouTube, but Twitch does bring more opportunities for viewership. So this was obviously the mainstream and all of the co-streams, but this was a very impressive figure, right? And obviously without OpTic winning the whole thing and making the run that they did, this number would not have happened. But the story, I mean, OpTic won it last year, and I think it peaked at about 280 odd thousand viewers, right? So there was a bit more buzz around it this year. I don't know whether that was anything to do with the fact that it was in the middle of nowhere, although I do think that had it been in a different location, it probably would have been even better. I know that some would say, oh, people didn't go, so they watched instead, which is like, yeah, but that's only really going to give you a few thousand extra, right, you would think. If it was in, you know, if this tournament was in Toronto, it probably would have been the best tournament of all time. Like, you know what I mean? So it is what it is. But we've got to take the positives here, because the COD community has been so resilient, I think, to what's happened over the last few weeks when nothing was really happening. As I say, like when I introduced this topic, what I don't want to happen is that the league looks at this and says, damn, we're killing it, right? Like, look at us go. We've topped the viewership numbers again. This break was clearly a great idea. We did no marketing for the damn tournament, and we still broke the viewership record. It's like, well, look, that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the OpTic story. It doesn't mean that we can't do better. Like, if I'm the league and I'm looking at this, I'm saying, okay, great. That's really good to see. We've got a strong community. Let's build on it, right? Like, rather than, and I hope that they won't do this, but rather than patting themselves on their back and saying, oh, what a great job we did this season, lads, because clearly there's a lot of room for improvement. I'm looking at these numbers and I'm saying, wow, we have a really strong community here that will support COD no matter what. There's interest all over the globe about this esport. You know, I see Dashy's replies, tons of players from other esports congratulating him. They watch the finals, right? So it's not like COD isn't still there. Still got so much potential if we do what we can with it. And I think what I'd be doing if I was running the league is to say, okay, we had 350,000 viewers for this grand final. Great stuff. Valorant Champions had 1.2 million. The CS Major had nigh on 2 million, right? So, okay, how do we get from 350k to 500k? Then how do we get from there to 1 million? That's the goal. So, you know, that's the way that I'd be looking at it. I thought it was nice anyway to see some of the quote tweets on this, what people had to say about it, you know, Zinni, methods, etc., etc. So, you know, OpTic Champs runs to CDL viewership every single year. But speaking of that, right, Adam Adamu from Toronto, look, at the end of the day, they put on this tournament. This is a pretty nice picture, right? Like, it's pretty filled out, the venue on the Sunday. Obviously, would it have been a different story had OpTic not been there? Sure. But at the end of the day, could it have been a better tournament? Yeah, but they put it on for whatever reason. There was a rumor that K-Sun threw around that the league didn't actually know that it was going to be run out of Kitchener. It is what it is. Now, he was also talking about the Mercury situation, because Ultra have been getting clowned, and let's be honest, for fairly good reason, for not keeping the kid. They brought him in, like, Ultra, again, great job scouting, right? Like, Beans has the visa issues. They're like, who do we pick up? This Mercury's kid, we've been keeping an eye on him. He looks pretty good. We're going to bring him in. Now, they signed him on a 2-week loan from Omit, where he was. We offered him a full contract right away. Now, of course, notably, this full contract was, I think, maybe a bench contract. And had it been a starting team contract, it probably potentially would have been a different story. He waited for free agency, which was a smart move, and with lots of interest, he signed with OpTic. That's it, as simple as that. I think the Mercury situation is quite fascinating, because after Major 3, when he came in, stepped in top 3 with Toronto, they wanted him on, you know, they were going to give him an offer on the bench. The team was willing to keep Beans on and, you know, keep Insight on. Obviously, they could have made a change there, and in hindsight, obviously, they should have done it. But given the information they had at the time, they were top 3 the previous tourney with Beans, top 3 with Mercury's. I understand why they didn't do it, but you know, maybe when you see a player who right out of the gates looks so strong and looks basically just as good, if not better than your existing starters, you know, maybe that was a sign that they should have considered it more so than they did. But they gave him an offer, it just wasn't an offer that he wanted. I also am aware that Cloud9 gave Mercules an offer as well at the same time. And C9 were offering, you know, what seemed like a reasonable offer. I think they were offering Merc 6 figures, something in that kind of ballpark anyway, to go and play for Cloud9. And that was before OpTic came along as well. So, you know, that was obviously going to be tempting for a kid who's just played one tournament to get a big offer from Cloud9. But if you join him, it'd be locked down. You know, I'm sure that accuracy, because he's a smart guy, as the kind of coach general manager, was pushing to make it happen. It didn't happen in the end. Mercules holds off just long enough that OpTic come along, but I think that if OpTic and Zinni and Hex didn't come along when they did, Mercules is probably a Cloud9 player right now, and he's probably not on the World Championship. So, you know, again, so many small things that could have changed the course of this season. Mercules ended up with the 4th highest overall KD, as I said earlier. Effectively, it was Mercules got them to Sunday, and then after that, Shotzzy took over really in the grand finals, had some crazy moments. But Shotzzy, number 1 KD of the tourney, at 1.24. Rencor was just behind with a 1.24, Rookie of the Year. And, well, you might argue Mercules has to be Rookie of the Year. I do find it interesting the fact that the regular season in COD is so short. We have 4 majors and then champs and then the World Cup. Like, the reality is 4 majors and the qualifiers, that's the regular season. But the 2 biggest tournaments of the year in terms of prize money and what people really care about, it seems anyway, are after the season is over. So if Mercules comes and wins champs and EWC, then he's obviously Rookie of the Year. But yet technically, because, you know, the way the season is done, it has to go to Rencor. And Rencor's absolutely deserving. But I'm just saying that if that does happen for Merc, it's a conversation that is worth talking about. But let's talk a little bit about Scrappy, but also Dashy and what he had to say about things. Just Scrap getting clowned, right? It's inevitable. I wonder if Scrappy's going to have a similar career arc to Dashy at some point, because already with Scrappy, the kind of topic is building, oh, you've played 3 world championships and you've not won a ring yet. Mercules comes in, gets a ring before he even did. It's only a few months ago that Scrappy said that I ripped my dick off if OpTic win champs. That was October, obviously, but that was, I think, based on their practice they'd had at the time against the team that they had at the time with Pred and Kenny and all this. So, you know, at the end of the year, obviously it doesn't look great, but maybe in hindsight, changes have been made. And, you know, maybe Scrappy was right for the majority of the season, and then things started to change. But this is what Dashy had to say on the situation on the main stage after winning the championship. And look, with so much criticism coming his way and coming the team's way over the last couple of years, and certainly this season, it must, you know, feel so good that they got the win on the board.
You've now gone back to back. How does this champs win compare to last year's?
I mean, it's so special in like so many different ways. Last year was, we felt like more of a complete team. This year we're just shuffling rosters left and right, and for us to battle through all that adversity and to win champs in the fashion that we did it felt like a whole movie, to be honest. And I'm just glad it was a good one at the end.
Everyone said it was home champs cheese for your win last year. What do you have to say to them now?
I mean, what are they going to say now? So, like, I don't know what they could say, but that's not my job to decide. That's not my work. We'll figure something out.
You've been part of so many rosters. What's special about this one?
I don't know. I think it's just the way we just mesh in game. We just complement each other's play style so well, and I think we showed that this weekend as well.
How do you want this OpTic run to be remembered in CDL history?
Dominant.
There was a bit of talk as well about the Daniel Say trophy lift kind of speech scenario. As Kenny said, the speech needs to be after the trophy lift. Thought it was pretty funny from Simp in the replies. He says Daniel Say needed 10-second time limit with that damn mic, because it was the same kind of thing last year. So I thought that was pretty funny to look back on it in hindsight, really. But very much enjoyed your thoughts on this whole weekend in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
Oh, check him out. Okay, Ben. He got that shit on.
Look at NJ, man.
Hey, you know
That's
he was
my
partying
dog.
because he has both buttons on the polo unbuttoned,
He's
bro.
him.
You
Ben
know
is
he was
him.
partying.
I tried telling people about Ben. I tried telling them.
Bro. This is why
He got
Ben.
that shit on.
Is this why Ben always wants to go to the events?
This is why Ben.
Bro, is this
Oh,
where my fucking funding's going? Is this where the budget's going?